Welcome to Causing the Effect, a podcast focused on the exploration of your mind, body, and spirit.
Causing the Effect, you know these two motherfuckers. And just to preface this whole situation, I'm a little drunk and a little psychedelically high, I guess we could say. Andrew Murnane, Ray Rheault, Dualistic Unity, two of my close friends, best buddies. I'm in love with them at the moment that I speak. I feel like a little fangirl of Dualistic Unity having Andrew's beautiful face with here. What's up, dudes? How we doing?
Doing great, man. Yeah, I'm excited for this. I look forward to these chats with you all day when it's coming up.
Are you serious?
We just had you on our podcast. Yeah, it's always a blast because we were talking about this on the last one that, you know, everyone has the state that they're in and the place that they're in life. And it's just about being open about where you're at. It's not about being this idea of perfect or a guru or whatever. It's just about being open. And that's where people connect with you. And the more open you are, the more honest you are, willing to chat about whatever fucking crazy shit you're going through. Like, that's how people connect. It's not about being perfect. It's not about being, you know, this thing for people to look up to. It's just about being yourself and as open as you can be. And I feel like in the spiritual world, we just get so caught up in trying to fit this fucking box. So that's why I love you, man, because you're honest, you're real. And yeah, you're a little tipsy on some mushrooms. I'm a little baked right now. When you said you might be on some mushrooms, I was like, shit. So I grabbed my little weed pen and took a couple rips beforehand. So I'm feeling great, man.
Never lets
Friday,
me down.
Chilling.
And I'll say that it's been like a journey of mine to be whoever I feel the inner essence of Scott is, right? But I feel like ever since we started doing this, it's been like a year and a half of talking to you motherfuckers. Like, this is crazy. I can't believe this. On the little Audrey, like, just reaching out, whatever. And people come and go, and you guys have stayed. And there's something about this Scott that I feel it's open, but it's also like real. Like, we're just gonna get into some shit here, and it's gonna be a little weird. Things are gonna get weird because I got a lot of insights and a lot of weird stuff happening. But yeah, I just appreciate you guys. And you got for people listening, if this is dropping like March, I just went on Dualistic Unity. What is that? Season 4, episode 9.
Yep.
Okay. And then
The Courage to Be is the name of the episode.
I saw that. I like it. I mean, me and Courage. I'll take it. And then everybody, just so you know, for what do we call this? The Dualistic Unity retreats.
Sure.
Netherlands in November. If any of you guys want to come, I know some of you have been messaging me about it. I'm really going. I know I say I'm going to things, but I'm actually going to the Netherlands. It's already. If I keep saying it's going to happen. I told my boss I'm taking off. What is it? A week?
9 days.
9 days with you guys. Oh my God.
From Saturday to the following Sunday.
Perfect. So I got to take off 5 days. That's it. Easy peasy. I will be there if anyone wants to come. We'll send you stuff and figure it out. But let me tell you what's been going on this week. I feel amazing, right? I feel good outside of all this stuff. And I was just proud of myself this week because, like, I feel like I always needed an external validator for me to feel good, whether it's like winning a bet, getting a girl, making money. And that the opposite has been happening to me this week. I've just been getting shut down in multiple ways. Like, I thought a deal, I get 30 grand, blew it. And I'm happy that I'm like not breaking about it, like in my soul. And particularly with women too, because I've been really starting this thing this year. I'm like, I want to get a girlfriend. It's like, that's not how this works. Fucking idiot. So I've just been happy. And I think part of this attributes to our conversation of you guys really just bringing up this present moment thing of understanding like nothing really matters in a way. And just like, why do I need to get that girl's number to be validated? Why do I need to like get the money to be validated? So I'm just proud. I'm going to tap myself on the back and say, I'm proud that I did nothing accomplished this week, but I do feel slightly accomplished. So
There is no such thing as doing nothing. Even when you're doing nothing, there's something happening. You are change, right? It's interesting. We always think that we have to live up to some standard. Like, if we're not constantly running for that carrot or running from the stick, that we're not progressing, and you can't help it. You are change. Life is change. Like, life and change are synonymous, right? It's not that life is changing, but life is change, and you are life. So you don't really have to struggle for that.
I'll just say, so yeah, the head of security in my building is the head of security for all the clubs. So they had video of me of like, Scott, this is what you've been doing. And I'm like, shit, I got to see the person that we saw that we were talking about on yours, the drunk guy, all this stuff. And when you see yourself from a camera and you think you're the lion, right? This is in my head, you know me, fucking tough guy. I'm the lion. And they show me this video and how quickly it changes to the hyena. And it went like, you know, I'm the guy. I'm going to look at the girl. I'm going to point, do this whole shtick. And I'm like, yo, why are you grasping so hard? And that's what the security guys are saying. I had the biggest insight. Dualistic Unity. Shout out to Phil and Sam at the security desk. It's like, yo, you're just grasping too hard. I was like, I keep getting these same insights from just people polar opposites. And it was just really an interesting thing to see, like, what are you trying to grasp onto so much? And that's what's been popping up a lot this week since we spoke. So.
That is awesome. I just want to say very quickly, because we have a dating and relationships workshop happening this weekend. I know this episode is going to be after the fact, but it really is so important to just be okay by yourself. Like, to not have to prove anything to anyone, to get into a conversation with a girl or a guy, whichever it is your interest, and just be in the conversation. That's the whole purpose. It's like, well, what are you trying to get out of this? Nothing. We're here together. I'm perfectly fine. If this goes somewhere, cool. And I'm here for the ride. But that ride starts to go off the rails, I'm out. Like, I don't need to be here, and you don't need to go through that either. I mean, if it's based on need, we end up in that raging dumpster fire eventually because we're just too unconscious to see it coming.
Andrew, you want to go?
Yeah. I was trying to find my mute button. I want to get into the relationship stuff a bit, but I just want to bring up how funny it is seeing yourself from, I mean, not really funny. It's kind of like,
it was
one of the scariest things in the world to see yourself after the fact, or to just get a recap from your friends, like have that anxiety, and then get told like the next day all the dumb shit you were doing that you don't fully remember. Like, that is enough for me to tone down any sort of drinking. And it's funny too, because I haven't been going out nearly as much this winter, but sometimes I will go out and either not drink or like not drink that much. And it's funny how, you know, especially when it's a dancing club or something, like a couple more drinks may help. But when it's not that, and it's just people talking, like, we think we're so much better at it than we are when we have more drinks in us, but we're actually better without them. We just have this perception of ourselves that we're better, even though we're worse. So it's like our perception of ourselves goes up and the reality of it goes down. Whereas if you can recognize that, then when you're in it and you're not, you know, tipsy and you're more sober, just have, you know, like a couple beers in you, you're going to actually do a much better job. And it's just letting go of your judgment of how it's going, because that's what you lose when you drink. But then your you know, quote unquote performance also goes down with that. So you're not actually netting out to a positive. You just think you are, and then, you know, it leads to some crazy stories the next day, especially when, you know, the drinks go from 2 to 3 to 10 to 12 or something. But with the relationships being based on need, it's funny because I posted a video yesterday, kind of just going off on similar to what Ray just said about how you don't need to be in a relationship. All these things that we need, that our society pushes, you know, you need to be in a relationship, need to get married, need to have kids. It's almost become like such a societal norm that we think that that's just something that happens, and it is a need, similar to water and food and shelter. Like, we've put it in that equation. And I've had some people commenting on that video that you know, relationships, no, they're a need, or I've had such a better experience in my life since being in a relationship. It's like, just because you think there are more pros to cons of being in a relationship doesn't mean it's a need. It's not about whether or not it's more beneficial to society, whether or not it's more beneficial to you. It's about what's a need and what isn't. Because as soon as something is perceived as a need and you don't have it, as soon as something is seen as something that's going to make you more and you're not there yet, you feel lack. And that's all it ever comes down to, is where are you at right now? How do you feel right now? So letting go of all of those things and the perception of them as needs is super beneficial to letting go of the state of lack that you're always existing in. We've just gotten so used to that state of lack that we think that it's normal in a way, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And for me, I just said, I would like to be in a relationship this year, right? Just this little change. But that change fucked up everything. Because when I don't want to be with a girl, it's like, when I don't want to be with anybody, I'm like, I'm me. I'm like flow and all this. And I felt like because I could talk about Phil. Phil don't care. Phil, you're listening. Phil's like this big black dude. They're blatantly serious. The security guys. They're like they're very like, they'll tell you like it is. And they're like, since January, so like, what have you been doing? Like, why are you being weird? And I'm like, what do you mean I'm being weird? They're like, you're trying to like portray or push like this certain thing. Just go back to like 2022, Scott. Like, just be flowing almost. And this happened right after we spoke on Wednesday. Like, this girl I was trying to talk to, whatever. Dude literally went up to her like 5 minutes and just got her number. And this happened each day this week now. And usually these things I would get so angry at this. I'd be like, why aren't you talking to me? And they just told me like, Scott, you didn't make your move, bro. Like, you're not even in the race. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that these people don't even know I'm trying to do whatever. And it was just like a very insightful week with women and stuff that like, I usually don't put this on autopilot. And I was like, what is like that I just need when I don't need it, then they flow. And then when I do say I want it, then you're weird. It was just a very weird, it's interesting how that little switch changes everything.
Yeah, it's also really important to recognize what you're walking into after the fact. We get so caught up in the meeting and the achieving of the date, right? But there's stuff that happens afterwards. There's a relationship, there's a person there, and you have to recognize that if you're going into a situation where that person is looking for someone to say the right thing, act the right way, look a certain way, and that's what gets them that number in 5 minutes, that shit's gonna burn. It's gonna burn. At some point in the future, that person's not gonna live up to their expectations. They're not gonna be who they wanted them to be, so on and so forth, because we all fall into the same trap of need, right? And I gotta tell you, Scott, it's the funniest thing for me. And I'm sure some of my listeners won't appreciate me saying this, but there is this consistent point that some people will make, like, right, but okay, so I don't need a relationship. I just want a relationship. It's like, no, you see, all you're doing there is just changing your wording. You're just making it sound better to your ego. The fact is, you're still fixated on this thing. It's like any other want, right? Like in the Bible, it says, thou shalt not covet, and it's usually thy neighbor's wife, so on and so forth. But it actually says, thou shalt not covet. Period. That's the whole goddamn commandment. Thou shalt not want. That's it. Why? Because when you want, you're not being fulfilled. You're not being whole in yourself. And so any relationship you go into is destined to be a distorted train wreck because you are not there. They are not there if they're not with, like, and that's the whole point. Like when you're walking up to somebody, if you're just being yourself and they resonate, that shit has a chance to last. That has a chance to last because tomorrow you're not going to have to put on that face again. You're not going to have to try and be what you think they want you to be. Because even if you do that perfectly year after year, you are exactly what you think they want you to be. At some point, you're going to recognize that they never loved you, just the part you've played. And that sucks.
Yeah. And this is the same thing that happens with all these women. It's like the first couple dates, I think I'm like, it's like you're putting the God thing on them. It's like, wow, you're perfect. And then it slowly starts shading away. And I'm like, yo, you're really not, you just had a nice booty. What was it?
That is sometimes what it comes down to. And when you're going into something with that perception of need or lack or want, whatever, and the etymology of the word want is to lack or lacking, actually, which a lot of people don't necessarily know. But when you come in with, you know, a want, even need, want, come down to pretty much the same thing. You're going to be veiled. You're not going to see them for who they are because you're trying to fill something, as opposed to, shit, I should. Do you cut these? Because that sounds pretty bad. Not fill, like fill a void, a psychological void.
I may put that on Instagram,
both.
Andrew.
I mean, both also, I guess. But anyway, when you go into a situation and you want something and you're just trying to fulfill this state of lack, like you're not actually seeing them for who they are. You see them as a stepping stone to fulfill yourself because you don't see it in yourself. And it's always the case. So it always comes down to that mentality, the mentality that you go into situations with. And people think that if you don't want something, it's not going to happen. But wanting something just fucking distorts everything about the way you go about doing it, because you're going to be manipulative. You're going to settle. You're going to just do something in order to feel better, as opposed to do things as a reflection of already feeling good and like already feeling whole in yourself, because it always distorts it. And so it always comes down to that mentality. And that's why, 2022 Scott, who didn't give a fuck about whether or not he was going to get a girl, because you felt good, you felt fine in yourself, you didn't need it, you were tapped into that flow. You weren't veiled by that perception of lack, that want, that desire, that always fuck stuff as soon as that, settles in and that becomes your reality.
How do we balance, like if you set a goal, right? You say, I want to, like, do you guys do goal setting? Is that even the thing, like for the podcast or for in your life? Like, because then aren't you saying I want the X then? And then by your point, you're saying that I'm lacking it, and then we're going through the same thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we do anything on a goal, more or less just a direction. Because I mean, life is change, as I said earlier. And so if you're already fulfilled, you can say, I'm going in that direction. Well, why? Because I can, because I'd like to see what I'm capable of, because I don't know what's possible down there. And that's very different than, because then I'll be okay. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be fulfilled. Then everybody will look at me a certain way. Then I'll have this and this and this, and everything will be fine, right? Like that's I think the misconception. Like something that dawned on me very early was that ultimately all of our goals. Have you ever played the "and then what" game?
Yeah.
Right, where eventually you come down to "and then I'll be happy," and it's never the case. And the same is true for going into dating or going out with anyone. If you're looking for a relationship to make you happy, don't do that. Stay out of that relationship, because you are just going to put weight on that person over time, and it's eventually going to blow back at you, or you're just going to settle for a prison that neither of you enjoys. Be happy in yourself. But to do that means that you have to let go of this idea that there's a certain amount of time it's going to take to meet that person, right? And like, that's the thing. Sometimes it's really challenging. Like my wife right now, for example, I was single for 3.5 years before I met Melissa, and I've been with her for almost 19 years now. In that 3.5 years, I went out on dates. I just wasn't looking for someone. When I met Melissa, as much as I liked her, I reminded myself, I'm not losing myself to you. And so I would respond honestly. I would say things that I knew she wouldn't like. I would say things honestly, despite the fact that I knew it might mean that she would leave. And so for the first several months, often she would either storm out of my house or I'd kick her out of my house. And that was the beginning of our relationship. And it lasted. Well, why? Because we were honest. We weren't just trying to satisfy a need. We were willing to let the whole thing burn just for the sake of making sure it had some quality to it.
Now, I think the speaking honestly is one of the hardest things I've come across, and just in the world we live in today. Like, and with you guys, it's relatively easy, but like, how did you go through that process of when you had to be around people that maybe you've already established this other persona and you're putting on this mask? And that's what, like, the second I get to Manhattan, it's like this other guy. So I fucking hate this. It's like, how did you walk through that? Because that's a major point of life, is just speaking honestly.
Yeah, I think the understanding that the inevitable fall as you try and play a character that you're not. Like, what are our options here? Whether it's dating, whether it's with friendships,
anything.
A lot of people come into situations trying to be something, and either say, to start out, you're trying to be something. Everyone likes you. Great. How long are you going to keep up that character? How long are you going to suffer through wearing that mask and eventually, take it off, or just suffer your entire life? And so when you take that mask off, you risk them not liking the reality of you, or they like that reality of you. Then you could have just, cut out all that suffering and been you the whole time. Or you go into it, being a character, they don't like you right away. Yeah. Could have just been yourself the whole time. You go into it from the start, being yourself. They either don't like you, and it's like, okay, eventually that would have been the outcome anyway, or they do like you, and then you avoid all that suffering. So it really just comes down to the one thing making sense, like logically. Like I've always been a pretty logical person. So once something starts to make sense, it's hard for me to go against that. I still certainly do. I still do get caught up in shit, but it just doesn't make sense to be anything other than yourself, which is what you are when you're not trying to be anything at all. Whatever that comes out as, it could be, slightly different in different situations, but it's when you're trying to do something in order to validate a need, I guess, is really what it comes down to. Like, you want people to like you so bad because you don't like yourself, you don't feel whole in yourself, and so you think you have to be this version that they're going to like, and you don't even know what that version looks like. So you might as well cut out all the trial and error shit of trying to be something else and just be yourself from the get. And then, you don't experience suffering no matter what. But it also comes down to being whole and complete in yourself. So for me, it was when I recognized that there was no point to it, that people weren't so concerned with the way I was acting. And really, I think above all else, a lot of people, see certain people who are authentic and they're like, oh, wow, that's the personality I want, what they have. And it's not about their personality. It's about them just being authentic. That's what people are attracted to. And that's going to be different for everyone else. And so, yeah, there's just a bunch of reasons, I think. But the biggest one being that it just doesn't make sense to be anything else.
Yeah, no. And I like that insight of like, you're going to have to take the mask off at some point, and it's going to wear you down. I guess I didn't realize that until, your late 20s, 30s. Like, this Great Scott guy, it's fucking tiring. And like, it's annoying when I see people now. You've been going out partying, bro. You've been doing this. I'm like, no, I'm trying to read some Nietzsche actually. And it's a little different. And now, but I did it to myself. If I would have taken Andrew's advice, it would have been easier from the get-go.
Yeah, but it doesn't always work like that. Like for me, I was that party guy before I hit rock bottom depression. I was trying to prop myself up by being liked by everyone. And so I'd have massive parties. I knew lots of DJs. I was always at the rave, surrounded by drugs, everything was great. I was that guy until I hit rock bottom. And I realized that the only person they really liked was that guy. It wasn't me. It was the part that I was playing. And so that contributed a lot in terms of my depression and whatnot. But after I got out of all of that, I went to see these friends and I had changed dramatically. I had shifted my priority. And so in my opinion, and please, listener, do keep in mind that I'm not the bar to measure yourself by. I did what was necessary for me. And I know a lot of outside perspectives would look at how I've tackled my journey as kind of cutthroat. And I'm not going to lie, it is. As far as I'm concerned, this comes down to priority. If the people you're talking to don't want to be your friend because you're being authentic, they never were. And you have to be willing to just take that on the chin. Doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about you. Sometimes it's like we want it to mean something about us because otherwise, how important are we? And that sucks to the ego too. But the fact is if you had to burn every relationship in your life to be free, tell me it's not worth it.
Absolutely.
And that's what you have to do. You have to go in, not with malice, not like, yeah, fuck all you people, I'm going to do what I want, but just the genuine, you do you, no judgment. I did that for the longest time. It's just not for me now. You play it out as long as you want to, go nuts, but I'm not there. And if that's a problem, then that sounds like your problem.
Mm-hmm. And if we take this deeper, for the people who didn't hear the episode with you guys, I know the answer, but how do I become honest? And how do I become the most authentic? And we'll start with awareness. We know that's where it begins, but I'll let you guys go.
I mean, yeah, by not trying to be anything at all. And I think that a lot of the discussion of, being your true authentic self is, a lot of it has to do with letting go of the idea of yourself, understanding that whatever you think you are is never the reality of what you are. Whatever idea that you cling to, it's like we get caught up in thinking, we start to let go of an idea. And because we're so caught up in the conceptual and the ideas, as opposed to being in reality here now, we think if we're not this idea, we got to be that idea. If we're not, the other idea that we cling to, we must be a different idea. And so we just fucking identity hop for our entire life, not recognizing that none of them are the reality of what you are. You're never, ever, ever going to be what anyone else thinks you are. You're never going to be what you think you are. Everyone's going to think you're something else. So there's no use in trying to be something for all of them. A different version of you exists inside of the mind of everyone you've ever interacted with. So understanding that can help you understand that there is no pure idea that you can be. You're not an idea. You're not a concept. You are what you are here and now, which is never, ever what you think you are. So understanding that helps a lot with all of those things. I forget what your initial question was.
No,
it was about honesty. And I just wanted to add, it's really important to not try to be an ideal. Like, we keep having this idea that if I was myself, I would act perfectly. If I was being honest, everything would come out smoothly. And that's not the case. It's like any other skill. It takes practice. Being honest means saying something that pisses someone off, saying something that costs you a relationship, saying something that might get you fired. Being honest is saying fuck it, throwing caution to the wind, and saying what you actually mean. And that's the foundation of it. It doesn't matter about the other person's response. What you mean is the most important thing. And when it dawns on you that the best thing for you and everyone else is that your authenticity, that's when you have the least distortion. Yeah, sure, people might get pissed at you, but at least they're getting pissed at you. At least they're actually dealing with you, not some fiction that you're trying to be for them. So the relationship has changed. You really have to go into it with the willingness to just burn those bridges, because that's how you find out the bridges that are actually solid. That's how you actually are able to have a relationship with somebody, when they actually are in a relationship with you and not who you think they want you to be.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think deeper of how a person would react to that. They would say, how do I know I'm being honest? And my answer to that would be, there's a congruency. I feel like when I'm with you guys, it just feels right. But then the thinking lacks. Like, every time we get into this portal, I'm like, I'm just here with we're just three souls just in this. And I think when you start figuring out those people that let you be more instead of thinking more, what does this person think about me? Why do I have to be in a whatever? Pick your poison. That's how you know it's right, when you have like that synergy, that synchronicity that we mentioned on yours.
Yeah, I think it's important too to recognize that you have to be that person first as well, the one who's allowing people to be, and that'll naturally sort of, attract whatever fucking word people want to use for that. But it starts with you, with letting go of the fear of judgment from others. You got to stop being so judgmental, with wanting to find people who are okay with just being. You got to be someone who's okay with just being, and then everything just kind of naturally happens. And if it doesn't immediately, like, that's okay, because you're fine just being. But a lot of people think they have to play this part. They have to play this character in order to, get the thing that they want, because they perceive a sense of lack. So it all comes down to how you see yourself, like with everything in reality, even in the discussion of recognizing unity. It's not about believing in it. It's not about trying to find, unity. It's about letting go of the idea of yourself being something inherently separate from reality, being something that you could ever possibly define. And all that's left is interconnection with everything. So it always starts with you. All the changes you want to see in the world, focus on yourself and watch it all change.
I have nothing to add to that. That's pretty much it. I mean, at the end of the day, is if you are yourself, if you're just being, it's like you were saying, Scott, you feel it. It's the best feeling in the world, just being who you are. It's freedom. It really is. But for somebody who's constantly lived their life within fictional railings of who they should be, who they shouldn't be, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, it's really off-putting. It really throws you off balance to suddenly be out of that. It feels really uncertain. You're like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I always say to people at that point, you're out of that world, right? Out of the woulds and shoulds. That's a product of that mentality of trying to be something. Woulds and shoulds don't exist in freedom. Where do you want to go? That's it. And as long as that want isn't originating from a lack, as long as it's just, I'm kind of curious about that. This seems like it'd be interesting. I could grow from that. Then you're always fulfilled and you're watching what you're capable of. But it's that switch. Until you get there, everything you do becomes poisoned.
I think what Andrew was saying too about when you layer your woulds and shoulds of yourself, and then you layer, well, the woulds and shoulds that your family should do, the woulds and shoulds that their friends should do. Holy fucking shit. It is like, this shit hits, because I could deal with my crazy self. That's easy. This guy gonna drink too much. All right, we'll deal with all that problem. Then I got to deal with the woulds and shoulds of how a person should treat me. And then, oh my God, it becomes just like layers of, and then I remember you telling me this, Ray, this is something that always hit me. It's like, that's not even honesty and trusting somebody. That's just like a barter system of, oh, I'm me and you should be my friend because I'm it's like, what am I doing? And then we're here. And now I'm this. And I've been just working more on like, I've just said, I'm not going to do a whole Tibetan Buddhism thing and get deep. I'm just going to be for like an hour every morning. And it's just, it doesn't take, 4 days is not going to fix the issue, but like there's been a space created in my soul. It's like, just not even fixing it, just seeing these things is funny. It's like, all right, you're a psychopath. It's fine.
It's funny, earlier in the episode, I believe it was towards the beginning, you had said something about, I just want to be Scott. I don't want to be the great Scott. I just want to be Scott. I just want to find out what Scott is, kind of deal. And then you were mentioning Buddhism, but we always forget, like when Buddha was talking about your Buddha nature, it wasn't saying find the Buddha inside you. He was saying, realize you're your nature, like find your you nature. Right? It doesn't matter what your name is. That would have been the name he used. It could have been Scott. Find your Scott nature. It wouldn't matter. But that's what he was talking about. It's not about following Buddhism. It's not about the Eightfold Path. It's not about Taoism or any of these other philosophies. At the end of the day, it's about the mentality that these philosophies were based upon. The person who was actually alive and figured out a way to live with less conflict in general. That's it. And if it comes down to that, then it really comes down to how do you want to walk that path? How much do you want that loss of conflict? Because you're the only one who can find it. Put no head above your own, another saying from Buddha.
Yeah. And we always think we have to do, like, put effort into things, like with all the stuff we've been talking about, letting go of ourselves or trying to fix ourselves. Even the space that's allowed, or the process of just being, like you were saying, rather than trying to figure out Buddhism and all that stuff, you're just giving yourself time to be. And so a lot of times we'll get caught up when we do that. We're trying to do it in order to figure out how to fix something. We think, okay, if I'm just being, then the answers will arise. But it's actually that process of being that allows the fixing to happen on its own. And so it's letting go of that. And that's what the egotistical mind can't wrap its head around, because it always thinks it has to be the one doing something. And it's like, when it stops being at the forefront of your reality, the problems begin to fix themselves, because a lot of our problems, not all of them, but most of them, psychologically at least, are rooted in the idea of ourself. When you allow yourself to just be, and that idea of yourself is not at the forefront anymore, and it's not as noisy or as veiling of your reality, things start to fix themselves because they're rooted in that idea. So as that idea gets less heavy, the problems get less heavy because they're totally intertwined.
You're back to what Ray was saying with the if then. If I sit and do this for every morning, then the being, like, it's the same shit. We're stuck in the same paradox every day. Now, how it seemed, Ray, you seemed like, are you guys still coaching? Does it count as coaching? Because I think it's coaching. I don't like the word, but
yeah, I don't like the word either.
Yeah, I don't like that. Like, how
you
do
just call it one-on-one chats?
Just, yeah, like, okay, so when we're chatting with people, because it seems that the first thing a coach would do, a Tony Robbins coach, we're going to set goals and then we're going to hit them. And why I got rid of my coach, so I was like, I can see through this charade that there will always be something I want. You can just say, I want X, and then you're always going to go after it. How do you chat somebody through the process of really really being? Because it seems to me this is a muscle that you just have to really constantly kind of keep near you and just use it throughout the day.
But it has to mean something to you. And this is, I want to go back to that again, because some people will come to you and they're not really looking for a change. They're just looking for the cessation of their suffering. So they just want the pain to go away, but they don't want to change themselves. That's all. And so at that point, it's like, well, you've still got some suffering to do until you recognize the pain comes from yourself. Then it really comes back to home. But until that point, there's really nothing you can do. But given that, if a person's at that point where they recognize everything I do within this idea of myself is causing me suffering, it's causing me conflict, it's causing me pain, it's so fucking heavy all the time, and they recognize it's about how I think of myself, at that point, that person already wants to change. All you need to do is give them the space to work it out, because that's what they're lacking. We're surrounded by 99% of the world, which is egotistical and lost in this mentality that's habitual and multi-generational. So we're surrounded by people who are constantly looking for validation of how they think about themselves. So if you break free of that, all of a sudden you're surrounded by people who are still pulling on you without recognizing that they're doing so. And how hard is it to actually process your own freedom when you're busy with everybody else trying to validate themselves through you and looking at you as the self-image that you're trying to break free from? It's fucking hard. So in a coaching session, quote unquote, we do a lot of air quotes on the show. It's just a chance for you to be you. Like when people come and see me, the most common thing they say at the end of the session is exactly what you said at the end of the episode that we filmed with you. I feel so light. That's the point. That is the whole goddamn point. You're carrying so much fictional weight that you don't recognize as fictional because you haven't had a chance to actually fucking look at it. You've been responding to it the whole time. So being able to sit back, look at it and go, why am I doing that? Changes everything. And having somebody there who's a third party, who's not involved, doesn't have an opinion of you and isn't judging you, to just go, yeah, oh yeah, I went through that. Oh, this is another thing. Oh, watch out for that. And it's a conversation. It's not like they're teaching you. It's not like, at the end of this, I want you to name 3 things that you've learned and all that shit. It's not. It's actually human interaction with another human being from the sake of uncertainty, where we can actually relate to one another, because we all miss that. We all don't know what the fuck we're doing. And just having a conversation with that in mind is transformative. It's powerful as fuck. It really is. And it's just that. It's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive in the extreme. I can't fix you because there's nothing broken. It's just the idea that there is.
Now, would you say to the person who's really in, everybody lives in that world where you're getting pulled from people. Like I sat with my mother came here, we were talking, and I just put the phone down. I said, Mom, this is my life. This is why I'm stressed. And you just saw a phone call every second. Every second. This is all my life is, right? People fucking pulling to me. What does this one want? Who do you want me to introduce you to? Where do you want the money from? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, yo, shut the fuck up. I just want to be, bro. I just want to sit. I was like, Ma, do you see it? She's like, I sort of get it. I can't believe that. And you can use me as the example, but like, is it just changing the job and the environment or the people? Or is it possible? Like, when you said that, I'm constantly being pulled back to the self of Scott all the time, which I'm fine with. But can you live a life both ways of being around in it and then being detached from it or aware of it?
Yes, I can say for sure that you can. The question is, how long do you want to? Because as much as you can sustain that level of clarity, even amongst everybody pushing and pulling you, it's not like it's not challenging. It's not like that influence isn't there. So you really do have to be on the ball all the time. And as you get older and your priorities change, you'll start to naturally drift away from the requirements of that living, just because you start to recognize, like, I don't need to do that. And a lot of what I was doing was actually based on this old idea of myself. And so it's a gradual transition. Where you are now and where you are 10 years from now is going to be totally different in terms of where you live, who you talk to, what you think about, so on and so forth. We don't keep that in mind. We wake up and we're like, shit, I'm in this situation I got to deal with. Yeah, but you're changing, which means different doors are going to open up day by day. And you're eventually going to find a different path that leads somewhere else. You don't have to worry about it. You don't need to stress about it. You don't need to escape if that's impossible to do, because you're just taking your shit with you, right? So your environment is actually an appropriate training ground, is how I like to look at it, for getting out of the mentality that you're currently struggling with.
And I guess if we use the tools you guys gave with awareness and all this stuff, like the doors that would open, you would just, instead of saying, I'm going to do that, you would gradually just say, oh, I got to move, or I got to change the job, and I got to do that. So it's just coming back to that main piece that we're talking about.
Yeah. It's almost like an allowing things to play out and understanding that they are, it's always happening. You're always in process. You're always making progress. But we're so caught in the mentality of, chasing the carrot, running from the stick, that we think we always have to make an effort to do something. And as Ray said a number of times, it's more so about the cessation of effort. That's freedom. The letting go of the want/need to do something, like implement yourself into the situation so that you can change it, because there's a lot of assumptions that come with that too, like thinking that what the best thing is. So then you drop yourself into it and you're like, I got to do this because this is the best thing. And it's like, you have no fucking idea what the best thing is. You don't know what's best for the situation, for the outcome, for you. And we have these ideas of what's best, but maybe if we just let go of those and kind of relax into where we were, that mentality shift of not trying to get somewhere in the future would allow us to see what's actually happening. And then more clear options arise, as opposed to being so caught up in the one track. So it's like we have these blinders on. We don't see everything around us. Whereas when we let go of the blinders, let go of the idea that we ever possibly know what the best case outcome of any situation is, we kind of sit in that freedom, also known as uncertainty, and see everything that's happening, as opposed to, being just confined to our opinion, which is all rooted in everything we've ever experienced and is extremely limited. So yeah, letting go of those blinders of what you think is best helps as well. And then things just play out more perfectly than you could have ever imagined.
Andrew, question for you. How have you felt from moving? Because like you went New York, then you went Costa Rica. Like, how is this whole, are you kind of just flowing with it all? Because then you went in the last 5 months, got rid of your day job, started a new job, your own entrepreneurial business, and just keep moving around from a beach to Utah to this, that. Like, how has that been? Have you seen a difference in the environment at least?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think right now it's kind of funny because I've been a lot more willing to allow things to happen. And, back last year, I was thinking probably at this point I would be back to traveling. And it's just made a lot more sense to be able to not have so many distractions in my life so we can focus on this. And then, in a couple months, get back into traveling as well when we have more of a base with, podcasts and everything going on. So, if I had been traveling, there probably would have been, it would have made it more difficult, even though last year I had this idea that, by what month is it? February, I would be back to traveling again after, being in Utah for a bit. So I think letting go of that. And I did have a period early on when we got into doing all this full time where there was, some fear that sort of kicked in. Basically what happened was my mind's a lot quieter than it used to be. And so I started to get some concern for whether or not I'd have something to say all the time, or if I'd, without so many thoughts going on, like if the ones would arise that I needed at the time, as we've been doing, just more talking all the time. We sometimes will have close to 6 hours straight of podcasts, group chats, live streams, whatever it may be. And so there started to be this concern because I started thinking about myself. I started thinking about, if that were to happen, if I were to start drawing blanks left and right, what that would mean about me. And I didn't even realize it. Like, it was able to come through, and I didn't even realize how much I was just thinking about myself so much through that. And so as I was able to let that go, it only lasted a few days, kind of culminated with me bawling my eyes out for like 30 minutes on a Patreon call, which was fun. And just happened to be like the perfect situation for someone who had just joined Patreon to like be more comfortable with everything, to see me being vulnerable, which is fucking hilarious. Because like leading up to it, I was feeling some weight and I was like, just don't cry. And then I did, of course, because it was just too overwhelming. And then it was like exactly what that person needed to see. So like everything just happening perfectly. But I think with everything, and even just, being in New York and having this mentality, I think it's helped a lot with just being where I'm at. And really with all of it comes down to just not thinking about what anything means about myself and just being, the situation, just continuing on, letting go of the need to get to a certain place and just put all of my energy into where I'm at, whether it's on a call, whether it's editing videos, whether it's doing whatever. It's like just being where I'm at, letting go of any concern for where it's going to get us. We get there, so much more easily than if we were to set goals and be like, well, we have to be at this point by this date. It creates a sort of energy that can be felt, as opposed to being free along the way, which is the most important thing for me.
Yeah, when your sense of self decreases, we think we would feel that what we're doing is less important or less significant. But there's like a paradox. As your sense of self diminishes, we feel more significant in other ways. It's very like counterintuitive, but when you connect to like something larger, like nature, or I love space, right? work, movement, whatever. It's the orientation of the natural universe shifts. And then momentum is created, and then you guys are flowing. Because like that's what I always felt with goals. I'm like, all right, you hit how many listeners on the podcast? Now all right, back to grip. Like, you gotta chill.
Yeah, we don't track our traffic. Like, we track our traffic, but we don't set goals for traffic. Like, it's just, we're gonna do what we can. It's gonna end up where it's gonna end up. Like, I've tried so many different projects over the last 20 years trying to change the world, as it were, and all of them were good ideas. It's just that a good idea is not enough. You have to have a mentality in the collective that's willing to accept it, willing to take it in, willing to process it and make it their own. And so for the longest time, it wasn't just about me and my progress, but everybody else in their progress, because we're not separate from one another, right? Like, there really is a flow happening all the time. And so we get caught up in the narrative. I'm supposed to be here. I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I doing this too much? Blah, blah, blah. You're doing exactly what it is you're supposed to be doing. But if you can recognize how much distortion is created by you worrying about it, it changes everything. That's why I think it's always so funny, because we think about Buddhism and monotheism and all these old world religions, but we get so caught up in the esoterica. We get so caught up in like the scripture and the books and the saints and all of this idea and whatnot. We forget these are human beings that wrote this shit down. Actually, it was human beings that were saying it verbally before it was ever written down. And what they're trying to communicate, and this is why I love the fact that in religion, there's such a big focus on faith, but it's faith in a fiction. So it's not really faith. Faith is just moving forward. Faith is the loss of yourself, as you were saying, and that's how you find God. That is the experience of God, is the experience of what's actually fucking here when we're not separating ourselves into an illusion. That's all they meant by faith. It wasn't faith in something. It's just move forward. Stop thinking about it so much.
You just answered my other. I was just gonna bring up that. I got the kinks here, might as well help. But you just answered it. The issue I have, it's my birthday month, right? Woo, birthday. I fucking hate this. I hate this month. I hate it, Ray, more than life itself, because it is I need to prove that I'm loved by everybody, and I got to make sure there's the thing, and there's the dinner, and there's the celebration, and I make sure everybody texts me. So why am I like that? But you just said it. You say you just kind of stop fucking worrying about it. Just go through it. I answered it, but what do you guys have to say about that? I really hate this. I really, a little bit.
Yeah. Right. It's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. Like, Andrew and I have had this conversation before. Christmas, my birthday, it doesn't matter. I say the same thing. Don't get me anything. And it's not because I'm like self-deprecating or anything like that, but I just genuinely don't need it. Like, I don't need it, because I don't need anybody to go out of their way to prove anything to me. It's not that they don't. It's lovely. Don't get me wrong, but I don't expect it. I don't need it. And if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. I'm okay. And that wasn't always true. When I first started, I'm like, don't get me anything. And then somebody didn't get me anything. And I'm like, oh, that hurts. Right. But that's the point. It's willingly going through that, recognizing the only reason it hurts is because of the habitual illusion that you're invested in. That's it. It's not going to not hurt at first. It's just like ripping off a Band-Aid. If you've been doing something habitually for a long time for a sense of comfort, and you stop doing it and you stop feeding that bear, it sucks. Because at first you're not sure what to do. You're just like, that really hurts. It's like, yeah, because of the thing you're trying to get past. Keep going. Keep going. Eventually that hurt will leave. It'll be gone, but it will never go away until you go through it and recognize where it comes from.
But when you're saying keep going, it's really saying letting go.
That's exactly it. Keep going nowhere.
Yeah, keep going nowhere. Andrew, are you a psychopath about your birthday like me? Or were at one point?
It is what it is.
You guys are fucking assholes.
I mean, what I've found, and like it ties into this conversation very much, is regarding expectations. Like, always going to lead to some suffering, for sure. Like, what kind of similar to building this idea of yourself. Like, is it necessary? Is it not? No, of course not. Trying to be something for everyone else, inevitably going to lead to some sort of suffering, whether you take the mask off immediately, whether you take it off, down the road, 15 years into a marriage, take it off, they don't like that version. Fuck, it sucks. But with expectations, you have certain expectations, they're met. Cool. That nothing really there. They're not met. You suffer. And so expectations are just not a necessary part of life. We kind of get them confused with boundaries, I think, and or trusting someone And we've talked about this in the past, that having expectations or trusting someone when it's based on how you want them to act isn't actually trusting them. It's just having expectations of them. And if they don't meet them, then you're disappointed, then you suffer more. So understanding that people are going to act how they act, and your expectation of them is not a necessary way for you to live your life. The lack of expectations is going to make your life so much more fulfilling, because you don't need anyone to act in any certain way. You're not concerned with how they're acting. It's different than boundaries, in that boundaries are oftentimes a necessary thing to set, and we avoid boundaries because we don't want to be seen in a certain way. When you stop giving a fuck about being seen in a certain way, you set some fucking boundaries, because you're like, I'm prioritizing myself. Where is your priority? Where does that lie? And I think that's what a lot of this comes down to, is just prioritizing yourself, not giving a fuck if anyone's concerned with you prioritizing yourself, or feeling like, you should be prioritizing them more, because then they're just expecting things of you. And it's like, that's not your fucking business. That's not your problem. Them having expectations of you has nothing to do with you. It's their need to, perceive everyone in a certain way, be seen in a certain way, feel like they're loved because they don't feel loved in themselves. That's all their shit. You don't really have to worry about that. And if they think that you do, just know that you don't.
Yeah, I think understanding that really whatever these people are doing, whatever you're portraying on them, it has nothing to do with you, regardless. Like that, I just always think, I always bring it back, well, it's because they don't love me. It's like, where are you getting that from? Well, that's the way you're conditioned. As you're, we go into that part, the trauma and all that. It's like, oh, that makes it a lot easier. So that prioritizing yourself really has nothing to do with being yourself or expecting anything about yourself from anybody else.
Nope.
This shit is all backwards, guys. This is all difficult stuff.
That's my favorite expression, that everything is half-assed backwards. Because it is. It's so counterintuitive. Everything is counterintuitive. I always think of it as one of those finger puzzles.
Yeah.
You want to pull, don't. You're just getting yourself farther into it. It's like anxiety. The more you try to cope with your anxiety, the more you reinforce your anxiety. One of the biggest lessons I've ever had was that the idea of myself that I'm working against is as powerful as I make it. So the more I fight myself, the more I'm going nowhere, because like, I'm as strong as I am. It doesn't matter which part I'm playing. I'm going nowhere. The only thing I could do is stop fighting. The only thing I can do is disempower both sides. So I'm just left with peace.
Yeah. I got nothing else, guys. I think we fucking rocked this one. This is shit. Of
course. I just wanted to add something, actually,
Yeah,
just because, Scott, this is not the first time we've chatted. I've always enjoyed the opportunity to get to know more about you and hear about what you're going through and whatnot. But I wanted to say to your listeners who may not know this, Scott's intention in all of this is really about as pure as it gets. Like, it really is about just doing the podcast because he can. It's the expression of him, and he's causing a ripple and all of that. And so I just wanted to say, from the perspective of Dualistic Unity and the community that we're growing there, that you're a huge part of everything that's happening in this change. And so we really appreciate everything that you do, Scott, but we also really appreciate the fact that your listeners are so supportive of you and your intentions in this. And so we just want to say thank you to both.
Oh, dude, you guys are the best. Thank you, guys. And it's weird, right? The one thing I did, like, this is the only thing I do, is like, this is for nothing. And it's the best thing ever. It's like, that's again, fucking, like, it's the paradox of life. Fucking awesome. But I love you guys. Thank you for coming on. They'll be on all the time. Dualistic Unity, check it out. Notes below. If you want to come to the retreat, if you know me, just reach out to me. You can hang out. We're gonna be everything's legal in Netherlands, right? We're rocking and rolling as usual.
Yeah.
It's the most important question.
Gonna be a fucking rager.
Mostly mushrooms, correct? All right.
Psychedelic truffles.
Still got me a mushroom.
And some good old cannabis for sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Maybe a glass or two of wine with dinner.
I'm really enjoying this whole wine mushroom mix. It's really the drink of the gods, guys. But all good. Cause and effect. Thank you so much. Like, review, subscribe, all that nonsense. But just stay safe, stay positive, stay blessed. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.